Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. If you don't know me, I'm Genevieve. I'm this year's SCAM president. And so I'm going to sort of be mediating this event, but it was organised by our events team. Yuhong, Kate, Isabel, and Alex in particular did a lot of work. So thank you to them. In a moment, I'll hand over to our speakers, Hanna, Camielle, and Irene, who have agreed to answer our questions. But before we do, I just want to acknowledge that while we're all participating in this Zoom from all over Australia and maybe internationally, most of the SCAM team and our speakers are in Melbourne. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Wurundjeri people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. I also ask that you keep your audio off during the panel and make note of any questions you have for our discussion later on. If your internet drops out or you need to leave early, again, this is being recorded, and so you'll be able to watch it at a later date. Okay, so over to the panelists. Could you start by briefly introducing yourself? Tell us sort of how you came to conservation in the master's program and what your current role is. Hanna, maybe we'll start with you.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, and thanks a lot to the SCAM team for organising this Zoom. It looks like there's a lot of people interested, so hopefully we can provide some useful information for you. My path to conservation was a bit of a winding one. I started out in theatre production, so set and costume designer. I did that. I studied at NIDA and did the design course there for 3 years, and then worked in the industry for about 5 years. And I found it was too difficult to maintain a sort of regular schedule, and I found that the working environment just wasn't for me. So I decided to take what parts of it were the most relevant to what I wanted to do, which was working with my hands, and apply for the master's degree at Melbourne Uni. And so I did that in 2014, 15 and 16. So I was still kind of half in, half out of theatre at the time. So I took 6 months off to do a production at the Queensland Theatre Company, and then I came back, and it was very weird, very strange indeed. But once I got out of the course, I had been working as a registrar at Niagara Galleries, which is a small commercial art gallery in Melbourne, in Richmond. And I'd also been working as a kind of sales registrar all round. Basically, I was the only person working at this poster sales business, which was all about published posters. And that boss gave me the opportunity to get into the business of linen backing, which is a Western folk conservation technique. So it's not sort of pure conservation, it's very conservation adjacent. It's a lining process whereby we take canvas and paper, put them together with starch paste, and then lay posters on to the lining, and then trim it all down. It's all tension dried. It's a very elegant process, but that's the kind of business that I bought and got into after I had this kind of conversation with my bosses to, you know, the fella that's doing it in Sydney, he's, going to America, he's going to stop doing this technique entirely. You should go down, have a look, do some training and get into that business. And I ended up doing so. And since then, I've developed a kind of, I've sort of worked with other private practitioners to develop a kind of collective model, which is non-linear. So I work in a kind of, I work in an institution, or like I work in my kind of studio in a capacity where sometimes I'm a team member for somebody else's project, and sometimes those people are my staff members, and it's all a bit kind of intermingled. So I suppose I would be the managing director of Studio M, but I'm also oftentimes to be seen as as hands for somebody else's project. Yeah, so that's where I am now.
Fantastic, thank you. Irene, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, I'm Irene Finkelde. So I'm an objects conservator, and I have an interest in conservation of natural history collections and plastics and preventive conservation. So got like my fingers out everywhere. So I also came to conservation, I guess, a bit roundabout. I've done 3 other degrees before I did conservation. When I graduated high school, I went and did a degree at TAFE in photography. Then I went to VCA and did fine arts. And so I did photography and new media, video art there. Then when I was studying at VCA, I got really into like the preservation of new media work. So then I started volunteering at the National Film and Sound Archive. And I did the online Charles Sturt University course in audiovisual archiving. Like I did that probably for about 2 years part-time. And I loved doing that work, but I also like got really caught up in the challenges of preserving new media works and video work, and how you have to constantly migrate the metadata to new platforms, and that just kind of did my head in. So I always loved natural history collections, and I decided that I really just wanted to work with physical objects rather than digital metadata. And so I started the master's at Melbourne Uni, knowing that I really wanted to do natural history as my specialty. And so I kind of built the course for myself around that, in where I chose to do my internship and how I did my thesis and things like that. So while I was studying all my degrees, I worked as a picture framer. So that gave me really a lot of experience in handling all different variety of artwork. So that's been really, really useful. I don't currently have a job in conservation. I'm looking for one. Some of you might have seen me helping out teach the chemistry course. So at the moment, I'm just trying to like still remain involved in conservation. So I've become really active with the Society for Preservation of Natural History Collections, obviously, because that's my niche specialty. And so I've helped them to organize, I don't know if you saw that recently they had a joint conference with AIC and Spinach. So I helped them to organize that. So I've been helping out on behind the scenes of all of the sessions there. And like I'm just making ceramics at the moment to keep myself busy, and that's what I'm doing. One day I'll get a job again. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And Camielle?
Hi, my name is Camielle, and I guess I'm slightly different than the other 2 women in that I have no art background, and I never worked in the glam sector until I finished this degree. But I have worked since I think almost the day I finished, full-time in conservation for the last 4 years. So I'm specialising in paper, and I guess that love came from my history background. So I studied Bachelor of Arts in History and Ancient World Languages, so modern history and ancient world languages, modern 20th century European history, and it was my concern, I guess, for the preservation of archival material that I came to paper conservation. I started a PhD and did that for a year, then had a year off and came to conservation because I thought I'd do something that would help me get a job. But I guess we all know what it feels like to be in that position. But my background was really varied. I was primarily a restaurant and wine bar manager, but I think those skills have been enormously useful in this field. I think that we underestimate how useful they can be. So no paid position in the arts at all prior to getting a job. I did about 2 years of volunteering at Museum Victoria at the Kodak collection with Baker and Rouse. I've done a year-long internship with the Jewish Holocaust Museum, in which I did some treatment and also my thesis in conjunction with them, which was really good. But I've mostly stayed in that really like archives, documents, documentary heritage, whether it be pictorial or not, that kind of field. And that's what I really enjoy. And at the moment, I'm a book and paper conservator, still training, but I got my first job at ICS as soon as I graduated, just a small contract, and I was floating between them, State Library of New South Wales, and the NLA, like National Library in Canberra, which is where I have a substantive role, and I've been there for 3 years. And I'm currently at GCS backfilling Noni Zachary, who I'm sure you all know. She's on maternity leave. So I'll be here for the year with them, and then I'll decide whether I want to get back to my job in Canberra. So I'm a bit torn over that. And I'm at the point where I'm like you, I guess, figuring out where my career is going to go. So yeah, I'm looking to do a lot more with books, and kind of promote that within Australia, just because I've seen my own weaknesses in a lot of the objects I have to treat. But I guess that's kind of more my love. Like, I love art as well, but I prefer working with documents and documentary heritage and that sort of area. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. So then, given that you've all worked in different sort of types of institutions, businesses, what are the differences between those practices? Commercial practice, institutions, that sort of thing, and what would you consider the benefits and downsides of each? Is there one that you think is best suited for a recent graduate? And maybe we'll start with Irene this time.
Okay, so for me, I can't really comment on all of them. I've only ever worked in an institution. So when I graduated the course, I got a fellowship at the Smithsonian. That was really amazing. So that was my first out of uni experience, was going to work at the Smithsonian collection. And then I've worked on projects back at Melbourne Uni, so helping Petronella with Polymuse project. I've worked at the Australian Museum, and I've worked at the Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences. So for me, I just feel so amazing to get to work within those institutions, to get to see all the incredible objects in their collection and to help with their long-term preservation in all your activities. From what I understand, is like when you work in this institution, maybe you get more time for treatments than what people in private practice do, and you're not as like bound by the money of how long a treatment takes and the money associated with that. But I think for recent graduates, with any role wherever you end up working, I think it's just like really important for you to come back to that chemistry. And I know the chemistry class was hard this year, but you'll be able to see those objects in person when you're allowed to go in. Come back to the chemistry, understand what the object's made from, understand how it deteriorates, and then just be really honest with yourself and your employees about what your skill level is. Like, as a recent graduate, you're not going to be able to do all the treatments. So be really, really honest and let people know like what skill level you're at, and ask them to help you develop those new skills. Yeah.
Fantastic. Hannah?
Well, I'm similarly sort of, I don't know, limited in my experience, in the sense that I do work within institutions sometimes. So one of the colleagues that I work with at the studio has a really good relationship with ACME. So oftentimes we go in to do quite simple conservation work, so condition checking. I've done maybe 2 treatments at ACME, but it's mostly assisting the registrars in getting exhibitions up and running and doing all of those sorts of things. So my institutional experience beyond that is my internship at Queensland Museum, which was very varied. You know, we did exhibition installs, de-installs, loans, condition checking. I did a couple of treatments. I think in terms of your question of which one is more suited to a recent graduate, I think it very much depends on the graduate. And I know that that's like a kind of unsatisfying answer, but for me, one of the things that I found the most useful in working in institutions is that I came to understand through doing that and doing private practice that the thing that I in particular have to offer the conservation is hand skills. Like I am very good at moving things around in a way that makes them look better, be more readable, that is satisfying for the clients that we have. And it was only really after I'd been working sort of in private practice for a while, and then went back to do a masterclass at State Library of Queensland in, we did a Carrie Barry masterclass. So it was a sort of Japanese master paper conservator teaching us how to make a Carrie Barry board, but also sort of general paper conservation techniques. And I was the only private practitioner alongside a whole bunch of people from institutions with ostensibly more kind of experience than me. And I found that my hand skills were, really well developed, and I could easily keep up with the way that we were being taught. And so I think that has to do with the fact that, as Irene says, there is not as much time for treatment in private practice. It's in the door, out the door, as quickly as you possibly can. There are dealers on your back saying, I need to get this to, like I had a dealer today say, I have to send this to New York. Can you get it back to me next week? And I just got it on Friday. So it's, the pace is fast, which I really enjoy because it's part of the way that I work. And it's very kind of helpful to have the theatrical background, trying to get up with, really kind of like fast-paced deadlines that, mean that you have to have something in a very short amount of time. So for me, private practice works really, really well. And for all the reasons that I've said, but also because I don't feel that my skills in research and in and my sort of technical skills are potentially as high as they need to be for institutional work. That's not to say that they couldn't be developed, but I think that the way that I work and the way that my vibe is very much private practice. And I think that if you are kind of looking at what you want to do afterwards, after the course, it might be worth having a really good, hard, look at yourself and sort of saying, for me, letting go of the idea of going into sort of an institution and sitting at in the back end of the institution all day and quietly working away at backing removals and things like that. That letting go of that idea was grief, I tell you what. But I know that it's not suited to me. So I have to kind of allow myself to be useful in the way that I can be useful, if that makes sense. Anyway, that's it.
It absolutely makes sense. Thank you. And Camielle?
I empathise and align with so much of what the other two women said, but I actually wrote this down because I wanted to say this and I had to really think about how I wanted to say it, because obviously I've had probably the majority of my young career in an institution, and I just want to push that there are so many jobs in Canberra for recent grads. You will get a job if you go to Canberra. I'm not I know that's not everyone's ideal goal and what they want to. It's not maybe where I'm at in my life at the moment, now that I've done some time there and found my feet a little bit. And like Hannah was saying, a bit more of what I like and how I work and who I am and how I fit in this big sector, right? But if you want a job, you put your name on the temporary register at a federal institution there and you will get a job. I can't stress it enough how much it impacted my life and how much of a commitment it was. This was a time where I was paying rent in Sydney, Canberra and Melbourne all at the same time, but it's been worth it for me. And I have so many good friends that have moved up there and are working in their field. So I think it's underrated maybe by us because we're down here and we're in our bubble. And I hate to say that, but it's a great place to be if you want to work in conservation truly. So if you feel like that's something that you're up for, even just for a couple months or whatever, like feel free to talk to me about it, or I can put you in contact with other people that are working up there. Like you'd have a nice little community, which is what I was able to gain. Anyway, I'm going to get off that high horse. But I did work at an institution there for a long time. And what I found when I worked there is kind of the opposite of what Hannah was saying. I feel like my time pressures there were really full on, and a lot of the things that were going on there were really full on when I started, but I really loved it. But the benefit of an institution was, at the time when I joined, there were a lot of senior conservators about to leave, and I learnt a lot from them, and I asked every question, the smallest question under the book, and I found that they were really happy to pass knowledge on and were anxious about passing that knowledge on. So it was like a really good time. I think the stuff you get to see at institutions is amazing in the sense of pride you have in this national collection that you actually, as an Australian citizen or a taxpayer or a friend of Australia, you have an ownership over, which I found that was really something that made me love my job, going to my job every day, despite, that, workplaces get toxic, workplaces get this and that, and they ebb and flow. But that's what I really found was a driver for me. Like I said, that's kind of more of my background, I guess. I also found that you get a lot of experience in installing and deinstalling loans and doing exhibition prep. You get to see a lot of, condition reports coming in from loans from all over the world. You get exposed to that network, and you get to see, I found, like, bits and pieces that I've taken that are my style, or things that, are my preference now. Really helped me with preventive conservation, with disaster planning, and really helped me as well, I guess, seeing where conservation fits in the GLAM sector in terms of strategic planning. So where the values are, where you fit in a machine, even if you're going to step out of it in a couple of years, which I think I might, because like Hannah, I'm not sure if it's my vibe. I'm not sure. But you do get to work a lot with stakeholders. I've been able to transfer that to private practice. You get to work a lot with, your colleagues and your GLAM networks. You get to meet a lot of people from overseas, and you do work in a client-facing role, even if you are a conservator at an institution. And it's really cheesy, but it's kind of a good thing, because it made me realise that, preservation really is an institution-wide responsibility, and you can kind of, I know you hear it all the time, but you can carve a path for yourself where you see the skills that you have, you can fit into, registration or different kind of, areas, exhibition prep, different things that you see that you like, that you get to kind of step in on every now and then, which is quite good. But having said that, I also do love the commercial side, I guess a more client-facing role, potentially more complex treatments in the private practice the one that I'm at the moment, because the institution that I'm at actually outsources, a lot of the complex work through tenders to private practice that I'm part of. Sorry, interrupt me if this isn't making sense, by the way. So yeah, they can both be really dynamic and exciting, and I think they're both really good places to be, and I think it's worth giving it a go, because you can just, a lot of the time contracts will be small to start with and they'll be short, and it's pretty tricky, but you'll be able to be like, no, that's actually not for me. Like, some of the red tape isn't for me, some of the bureaucracy isn't for me, but I can learn from it as well. So yeah, that's my soapbox for institutions. I've loved working at an institution, and I've hated it at times, and I've loved it, and I really advocate for, trying that out if that's something that you would be keen to do.
Thank you. Okay, next question. How did you bridge the gap between graduating and your first job in conservation? How long did it take you to get a fixed position? And how many unpaid positions have you done before getting a job in conservation? Irene, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I was just seeing in the chat. Camielle, I think you sent that message directly to me instead of back to the chat. Just so you can send it back to the real chat.
Yeah, sorry, temporary register, yeah.
Yeah, all good. So while I was studying in the master's, probably about a year before I graduated, I worked on an application to get the fellowship at Smithsonian. I'm gonna put the link in here now, so everyone can have a look. And if you have a project that you want to research, you should have a look and you should apply. So yeah, while I was studying, I worked on that and I found out that I got it. So then I knew when I was graduating that I had that coming up in 6 months' time. So when I graduated, I just worked as a picture framer for that 6 months in between. And then I was lucky to go over to the US and do my research. And so then when I came back to Australia, I think I had like a few months of no employment, and then I got some work with Petronella on the Polymuse project. And then I got a job in Sydney at the Museum of Applied Arts and Science, and also at the Australian Museum after that. So I've not ever had a fixed position. It's always been like jumping from contract to contract, and they've all been just for short periods. And yeah, I did a lot of volunteer work in conservation before I got a paid job. So while I was studying, I did volunteer work with the Teagues Museum of Zoology, the Koori Heritage Trust, and at an archaeological dig site. I think Hanna, Camielle, did you also work at Koori Heritage Trust? It was a really amazing project.
No,
Yes.
I didn't.
Yes, Jane is wonderful.
Yeah, so wonderful. We're so lucky to do that. So yeah, I did the master's part-time over 3.5 years, and that really gave me all the time to do this volunteer work. So that's something for people to consider as well. I remember when we were studying, I think it's different now, and I really feel for all of you with COVID, it's really challenging to get those kind of volunteer roles. But when we were studying, the lecturers would send out emails saying something's coming up at this organization, something's coming up that organization. So just like jump on whatever came up. Yeah, that's it.
Great. Camielle?
So I think I actually, like I said before, I jumped on the temporary register for the NLA when I was like just halfway. I did the course over 2 years full time, just as a block, about halfway through that second year, and I did an interview a couple months later, and I didn't get the job, obviously, because I didn't have any experience. But they put me on like an honour list, and so they say you're applicable for the job, but like someone else with more experience got the fixed position, and that's how I ended up on this cycle of being there and being on contracts and things like that. But in terms of bridging that real gap, I had a backup plan. I previously worked, I think I said, with Museum Victoria on the Kodak collection. During the Masters, I worked for Cultural Collections for 6 months with Jason Benjamin, who I think is still doing the course, or a few of you might know him from around. He's the curator there. Then I also did, I guess you guys also know about the War Heritage Roadshow, or you would have heard of it. I went on that and made a connection with a museum out near Wodonga, and then started applying for grants for them, and was getting grants and was going there and doing work. And I was still traveling back to that. It was in Indigo Shire, so like kind of halfway between Melbourne and Canberra, like near Glenrowan. And when I got my job in Canberra and I was still on contract, I was still going back to Chiltern on the weekends, like driving down and doing that job, that unpaid job that I had grant money for. So that was my plan. Like, I guess I just followed what Robin said at the time. It was like, if you can't get a job, you need to find the money. So I tried to do that, and like it actually worked, which was pretty cool. And I did it with a friend. Like, I partnered up with someone else because I didn't feel confident doing it alone, and it wasn't major treatment. It was really preventive and rehousing and that kind of thing. I got several grants with them, and then I used that a lot for examples in my interviews and things like that. So that's how I did it, like by pure luck. Yeah. Seriously, timing. Yeah.
Hanna, what about you?
I relate very much to both Irene and Camielle. I didn't do any volunteer or non-paid roles after I graduated. It was all while I was at the university. Similarly, we accidentally got a grant to do some paintings conservation in a rural community as part of a respect project. And so we ended up that ended up being quite a massive project for 4 of us. And I volunteered at the Koori Heritage Trust. Excellent place to volunteer if after lockdown, oh my God, lockdown, you're able to get in contact with them. They taught me so many sort of basic skills of keeping a collection running that was just invaluable. I volunteered for the RSL War Memorial in Narrabeen. I was always chatting with my colleagues at the uni, and now essentially I work with 4 of them that were at the university at the same time as me, except for one who is graduated. So she started the course just as I was graduating, but she's just that amazing that she's whittled her way into our studio sort of collective situation. I too had a backup plan. I was, as I say, working for an art gallery, a small commercial art gallery, and they had offered me a maternity kind of situation similar to Camielle, where sort of I would go in and be the registrar / art handler / everything. I mean, in a small commercial practice, you are everything. So, I mean, I suppose that's also quite a sort of interesting thing to think about if you're sort of getting knocked back at institutions and whatnot. Commercial private practices are small, but they are mighty. So you can get a lot of skills really fast by, essentially having any role. Like I started out as just a kind of admin assistant. And then 4 years later, I was asked to essentially run the show, and so I think those kinds of situations can be really useful, sort of baptism by fire sort of situations. What else? But no, unfortunately, I didn't do any unpaid internships, partly because I couldn't afford it, like, rent, bills, things, there's not the kind of, I wasn't able to, so I didn't do it. So I passed up a number of opportunities that were, that could have been available to me. And I was kind of essentially doing volunteering on the government's dime when I had Oz study for the, the course. But I think unpaid internships can be useful. Another thing that I will say at this juncture is that I understand that we're in lockdown, but I do invite everybody to come and have a cup of tea here at the studio, where we're a sort of a lovely little community of conservators in Melbourne who have all, for whatever reason, decided that we can't travel, because I understand that also the accessibility of being able to kind of move to Sydney or move overseas or move to like another place in order to do jobs or, gain contracts and things like that isn't for everyone. It wasn't for me. I have a family here and I won't leave them. And so I needed to find something to do in Melbourne, and this was kind of the solution for me. And I understand that that's many people's situations. Like, it's wonderful to be able to sort of go overseas and get like diverse experience, and that's really important as well. But I understand also that it's not accessible to everybody. So yeah, come have a cup of tea with us and see the space, see what you can do. We have a hot desk situation. So if there's any private conservation jobs that you want to do, we can sort you out.
The day after lockdown ends, 60 people turn up at your
Yeah, well, I mean, we have a capacity limit even after lockdown, so we have to, but get in touch and we can sort it out.
Okay, well, seeing as you've sort of mentioned grants specifically, do you have any advice for applying to jobs, internships, and grants during and after your masters? Camielle, let's start with you this time.
I do. I've applied for a lot of jobs, and I just want to let you know, I was looking through my emails from when I had a job as a receptionist at the uni, and I used to kind of apply for jobs on my downtime. And I actually applied for 168 jobs I've got here that I didn't even get feedback on, that weren't necessarily conservation related, but they were kind of adjacent. So like, keep going. You don't be disheartened, because I remember I've forgotten that I'd felt like that. And then I looked back at this thing that I kept of like all the jobs that I've applied for. And yeah, it's just nuts. But sorry, what was the question again? Sorry, I'm cracking myself up looking at this thing.
No, okay. It was your advice for applying to jobs, internships, or grants. So
jobs, big one. And I think, like I said to you, I didn't work in the GLEM sector before really. I got a job at ICS, just a small few contracts, and then New South Wales Library, and then the NLA, which was a really formal interview process, as you can imagine. And look at the strategic plan of the institution. Like, it's boring, but read it, make sure you understand their key directives, what's driving them as an institution. It's really important. And if you can use those buzzwords and use those keywords in your interview responses, even though you sound like, you're just a monkey repeating like stuff you've outlined, that's going to impress them. It's going to get you a job. And I wrote a little note here as well about interviews. So I'm just trying to find it. Yeah, most of it is about answering the each key selection criteria with one example. Just give one fleshed out example. You don't need to say, I've done this, this, and this, and give a list. I know you hear it all the time, but like a really fleshed out example, and it doesn't have to be conservation related. I didn't get my first job at the library, my first proper job, I guess, with any conservation, except for my internship really, and a few volunteer positions that I've mentioned, but they weren't really complex treatment heavy at all. So if you can give that impression that you learn hand skills on the job, and that you're going to be a good team member, and that you're going to look at what they ask you to do in the selection criteria and the application. If you can do that right, like, you're hitting your mark well, because I've seen a lot of people hand in some really funky CVs and like selection criteria and stuff, and it's like, literally just read it and do exactly what they want you to do, and then ask for feedback. I keep actually a Google Doc of all the questions I've ever been asked, of all the feedback I've ever gotten, that like I can just search. I ask my friends for every question that they get asked in an interview, and I write it down, and I write down responses. I keep a Google document of every single thing I do that's experience. So like every single thing I do, so that I can add it to my CV and make my CV really succinct and targeted when the time comes. And then if I have a really like kind of a fleshed out experience, I go back to those questions and I type in my response. So it makes the whole thing less stressful. And it's something that I've developed over the last 2 years, and it sounds really neurotic, but I think it was Lisa that said it before, you are actually doing so much and you forget about it. So I would suggest being neurotic and keeping some kind of list, some kind of like concise record of your notes for conservation work, and also just every experience that you're getting, everything you attend, everything you read, especially during COVID, like all of these, I'm sure a lot of people are doing workshops online or like listening to things online. Just keep a record of your attendance. You never know when that might come up for something. I don't know. That would be my advice.
Great. Irene?
I have so much advice. I've written all these notes for it. So my first advice would be to tell people to build your networks and find your people. There's so many niche areas in conservation. I like natural history. Maybe you like new media, maybe you like ceramics, maybe you like paintings, who knows what you like. So find those people who are working in that area, who are doing research in that area. send them an email. Everyone in conservation is so nice. I'd be so happy to hear that you had read one of their papers and you were interested in what they were working on. And you know, the worst thing that can happen is that they just don't write back to you or they say no, but the best thing that can happen is that you develop a really meaningful relationship from that. So for me, I have found myself amazing mentors throughout my career. My mentor from Smithsonian, I met her at an ICOM conference, and the one that was in Melbourne, like I think it was like 7 years ago. And then when I was traveling overseas, remember when we could do that? I emailed her and I was like, do you want to meet up, get a coffee? Can I talk to you about natural history conservation? This is a really like niche area, like maybe there's like 40 people in the world doing this. It's like, if you can find your people, then you need to stay in contact with them. And so, yeah, then she spent the day with me showing me around the collections, and we just talked about conservation the whole day, and it was so amazing. And then by the end of that, we're talking about maybe we can do an internship. And then, so I went and got to do an internship with her. And then she helped me do my whole fellowship application. So it's really about finding your networks and finding your people. Have a look at all the organizations, look at AICCM, look at AIC, look at ICOM, ICON, like find your niche specialty group and get in touch with those people. Join the committees of those organizations. That's where you'll make really good contacts. We spoke about it earlier that you should like maintain networks, and it's challenging for you guys to make and maintain a network virtually, but this student cohort who you're with, they're the ones who you're going to call later to get advice from. So if you can make connections now at uni, do that. Make sure you maintain your relationships with your staff and your lecturers, because you're going to need them for a reference when you graduate. So it's good to keep in touch with them. If you're going to apply for a research fellowship or internship, I would say spend as long as you can on the application. Make sure you've thoroughly thought through your research topic and questions and have it like really succinct in what you want to do in that time. Get in touch with the people who you want to be your advisors and supervisors, and make sure you've given people who you need to have like 1 or 2 people write you a letter of recommendation. So make sure that they have enough time to do that. And also you might need a visa to travel internationally. So research what visa you need and factor how long that takes to get. Like my US visa took like 6 months to get. So you need to factor that in your timelines for your project. If you get international interstate internship while you're studying, Melbourne Uni's got scholarships through Global Scholar Award. So I'm putting that link in the chat now. And so they can give you some money to go overseas. And also, I don't know if you guys have seen the Cultural Collections program. I don't know what's happening with it with COVID, but you should all look at it anyway. The Cultural Collection program have International Museum and Collections Award. And I was really lucky to get that in 2017. And so they funded me to go and work at the University of Birmingham and work all the collections there. And I just got such amazing experience working across not just conservation, but also really museum adjacent fields like collection management, project planning, education and outreach. So apply to that award, put your name out there, try and get it. With job applications, I say join up AICCM as a student member if you haven't done that already, because that's where most job applications in Australia get advertised. Or now we share them a lot on the Emerging Conservation Facebook page. So if you see one, put it there for everyone else to see. If it's not for you, if it's not your specialty area, it's going to be someone else's. Apply to all the jobs, like I said, even if you don't think it's right for you. How I got my 2 jobs at Australian Museum and Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences. I applied for a job there and I didn't get it, but they put me on the talent pool. And then like a few months later, they called me and said, we have a different contract. And if you're already on the talent pool, they don't have to advertise the job again. They can just make a new contract and offer it to you. So that's really a good way. I think we already said that like maybe you have to be willing to move around early in your career. to get those contracts. Like there's a lot in Sydney and Canberra at the moment. Maybe you have to go for 3 months just to get some experience. Oh, I've got a bunch of notes. I'm going to just copy them over here. Sign up to the AIC Global Conservation Forum. That's where you'll find a lot of international things. Sign up to different emerging conservation groups. And here's more links here. Volunteer for Melbourne Uni. I don't know what's running at the moment with Cultural Collections program, but get in touch with Helen Arnoldi from Cultural Collections at Melbourne Uni. They run heaps of different projects. It's a great way to get some skills. And apply for a fellowship like Camielle got from the International Specialized Skills Institute. So that's a lot for everyone.
Great, thank you. And Hannah?
I feel like I have a slightly different experience because I do not apply for anything pretty much ever because I don't. I've got a fixed position as my own boss, yeehaw. But I think that there are a couple of things that Irene said that I want to sort of like expand on in terms of your network. It doesn't necessarily even have to be people in your field. It can be people who are outside your field that you can then kind of relay jobs to, and then they'll do the same for you. I mean, a lot of my work comes through, you know, somebody at the studio just saying, oh, you know, I'm thinking of applying for this tender. Can I put your name down as the paper person for, you know, this kind of museum job that they're putting out? And I'm like, yes, absolutely, go ahead, put me down. And similarly, you know, I relay quite a lot of the kind of I relay retouching work in particular to one paintings conservator that I work with, whose retouching is just amazing, spectacular. And my clients are a lot happier with her work than they would be with mine. So I'm very happy that, you know, she's around to kind of like, obviously I pay her for that service, but, you know, I think that if you also sort of expand your idea of what your network can be, it can be like pretty much anybody with any specialty, because one day you'll get a question from a client or from a family member that's like, oh, I've got this frame, I wonder how old it is, you know, and you'll have no idea, but you'll know someone who knows. And so you can kind of build relationships in that way as well. I do a lot of emailing around when clients come to me with questions that I have no idea about, to various different specialties and people that I've met along the way. And it can be, you know, really, really useful to be the conduit for that information, even if you don't have the information yourself, if that makes sense. The other thing that I'll say just really quickly about grants is that you're more likely to get the grant if it's for something that someone else has asked for. Now, that sounds really clunky. So it's basically if you're fulfilling a specific need that someone has kind of, you know, raised. So for example, I applied but didn't get a grant, but, you know, this is a good example. I went on an Indigenous walking tour recently, and there was a scar tree that has been kind of felled because of OH&S reasons, but it's kind of sitting on the ground. And during the tour, the guide was sort of saying it would be really good to get this up off the ground so that it doesn't rot away. And I thought, excellent, fantastic, this is a grant that we can get, you know. And so we did up an application, didn't get the grant, but we, you know, I reckon if we apply to a few different foundations like Copland Foundation, you know, people around the place, you know, ARC, all of those sorts of things, I'm sure that we could find somebody who is willing to fund that project, because there's a specific need for it, and it's very sort of culturally relevant to our area. And so things like that are really good in terms of getting grants. And that is all I had to add. Everything else that the others said was great.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think maybe this might be the last question. How has your work changed since COVID? And how do you see your career evolving over the next 10 years? Irene, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, COVID's been a real challenge for me, like everyone else. Brought up a lot of really significant mental health issues with myself and my partner. And that made me leave my job in Sydney and move back to Melbourne. So that was a really big life change. But it's nice now to be back around my family and my friends and have support network here. So that's good. Even though it's challenging to find work at the moment, especially because the borders are closed, like previously I might have commuted back and forth. I know that that won't be forever, and I'm really fortunate to be in my circumstance, and I just spend my time doing other things. Like I said before, I've got all my hobbies. So yeah, COVID is hard. It's hard for everyone, and I really, really sympathize with all you guys at the moment. But also, COVID has like brought a lot of us together in ways that maybe we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So right now, tonight, if this had been an in-person event, all you people in Sydney would probably not have been able to come along. So now we can meet in other ways. I've been spending a lot of time being involved with my colleagues in Spinach, the natural history organization. And so I get to have meetings where like we have to coordinate some crazy time slot that we can all from all over the world meet and talk with each other, which we never would have been able to do before. So, it's a terrible time, but there's some positives to come out of it. And so I hope in the future I'll be able to get a job in an institution again. Conservation is such an amazing career to work in and really, really fun people to work with. So hopefully that'll happen again. And one day maybe we can go back overseas and work overseas again. Who knows? So we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, hopefully. Camielle?
So my start of my story is really similar to Irene. I've been commuting between Canberra and Melbourne for 3 years because my partner's here, which, yeah, it's not like great and it's expensive, but for me, it's been worth it. But now is the time to stop doing that. And like by the stars aligning, I got this job with the Grimwade Centre because Irene is on maternity leave. So that's the universe aligning for me in a really nice way. So I'm lucky enough to have 2 jobs during COVID because I have a substantive role at the National Library. I can take 12 months of leave without pay. So that's what I'm currently doing. But I did work from home a few times for the Grimwade Centre during COVID. So that was my personal hardship, my personal experience. And then in terms of being a conservator and your work during COVID, what I've done is found that I've had so much time that I never get to do. You do a lot of admin, like it's not all treatment and nice things. There's so much admin. There's so much research that I don't get to do. There's so many inadequacies I I have in my own knowledge and my networking, and I've really taken time to get on board with that a bit more. I found it challenging, but I've got a bit of experience behind me, and I felt, all right, now I know Zoom, it seems like an easier way to meet people. I don't know, professionally, because I've really put myself out there, and I've found a lot of good networks, and I've done a lot of training. And like Irene said, I've applied for the ISS George Alexander grant, and I'm going to do that online, even though it's an overseas scholarship, like fellowship. So I'm going to do that. And the dissemination of my knowledge, I'll be coming to SCAM to see if I can help share that with you guys, and a bit of bookbinding for paper conservators, essentially, like book treatment for paper conservators. So that could be really nice for us to get together in the future and kind of look at. But yeah, COVID has given me with just my conservator helmet on, time to get my clear thoughts together, what I need to know, where I want it, what direction I want to go in, what research, what groups I want to join. I've joined a few working groups looking at systematically reviewing literature surrounding modular cleaning with paper, works on paper, that kind of thing. So, but then it's hard because you're like, but I'm at home, but I'm doing all this extracurricular stuff that I can't do on my work time. So it's like conservation all the time. And the report writing isn't always fun. And your treatments don't always go to plan. And then you have to write a report about that. And yeah, conservators have a lot of admin to do that I don't think gets spoken about as much as you. Yeah, I mean, I guess you get it when you do that huge condition report for Petronella, I think it is, but so not kind of in that way, but yeah, there is a lot of admin associated with the job.
Great, thank you. And Hannah?
Hi, I'll try to be brief. I think that when I first started at Studio M, sort of owning the business and sort of starting it up, I was by myself a lot, and so I feel like I'm reverting a little bit. So I used to do all the bookkeeping, do all the sales, talk to the clients, do the quotations, do the treatment, re-talk to the clients, clean up, take the bins out, make sure there was coffee, you know, I used to do everything, and it wasn't a very sustainable way of working, but I suppose it was kind of just what it needed to be at the time. And then over the course of the however many years, I can't remember, that we've been doing this, not very many years, like 5 years. We've taken on new staff, and now, you know, there's kind of a person for every part of the process, which means that in normal times, I get to do a lot more sort of pure treatment work, because all of that very irritating paperwork that Camielle was talking about is kind of taken care of by other kind of members of the team. But at the moment, I'm doing it all again, and I am suffering, I think, mentally because of that, because I really just want to be doing treatment, and so I think that it's been really tough, kind of taking back control of the books, and you know, even just emailing clients can be quite stressful, and so like, not even in kind of weird innocuous ways that you don't sort of expect, you know, if their expectations aren't sort of exactly what the reality of the situation sort of, and they don't actually match, which is often, there's a lot of effort and work involved in sort of bringing everyone up to speed on, you know, how far you can push an object before you're sort of doing more harm than good. And I find that process very stressful, and I've outsourced it, and now it's back on me, and now I feel very stressed. But I'm really hoping that lockdown will be over next week, and that we can have all of our beautiful people back. And I think for me, working with other people is the only way to work. It's the only way. So you know, get your people, find your friends. It doesn't matter what you know, specialization they have. Just if you like who you work with, then it works really well for everybody involved. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much to all three of you for sharing your experience, and especially being very honest about the difficulties when it comes to finding jobs or working in COVID. I'm sure it's something everyone can relate to. We're going to have some questions now from the audience, and because there are so many of us and we're on Zoom, I think what's going to be easiest is if you have a question, to write it in the chat, and I'll come to you and you can ask it. And then if you don't want to have your voice recorded, just let me know in the chat and I can read that out.
I have something else I want to say too. I think there was another question here about skills we developed outside of the course.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. I think that's important to talk about.
Okay, great. I skipped over it for time, but
no, that's fine.
Start with that one.
I have something that I really want to say to people is that something in the course that's really not covered is hazards and health and safety. I don't think it's covered anywhere near enough. And sometimes the objects that we work with can be quite hazardous. They might have toxic compounds. They might have, in natural history, really weird preservatives. They might be radioactive. They might have mold. So I would really, really encourage everyone to like know what you're working on, do in-depth research, know what you're touching, know what you're handling, wear the right PPE. If you don't feel comfortable working on an object, like talk to your supervisors and know what the risks are in working with the object. I'm going to put a link to a book in the chat. It's called Health and Safety for Museum Professionals. It was written by one of my supervisors. She's amazing. She's worked in conservation for like 50 years. She knows what she's talking about. And then later this year, the Smithsonian and a bunch of other organizations are having a safety and cultural heritage summit online, and it's free, and you can really learn about a lot about collection objects from going to that. So you look after yourselves, like know what you're working on. Yeah.
Great. Did you say you had something to say about that as well, Camielle?
Yeah, but Hannah, do you want to say something?
Oh, no. My other thing was 95% of everything is handling, correct handling.
It's totally true.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah. I didn't even think about this before Irene just spoke, but to piggyback off her, I have a chronic injury from a treatment that I undertook at somewhere that I worked, and it causes me to question whether I can go on in this career for as long as I'd like to. And it happened because I didn't speak up, and because I was so intimidated by senior conservators, not by them, but by my own block of like, I just want to do everything and I want to work as long and as hard and as fast as I can and get this right and be impressive to people. And it was a combination of, yes, not being listened to, but also me being like that way inclined. And I'm rehabbing it now, and I'm really open about it with my employers now. But it was like an injury that I would wake up in the middle of the night just crying because it was so chronic and so bad. So, and I haven't been in conservation for that long, so it did get me down for a long time. So I can't stress it enough. You know, you always think, oh, it's a bit of ethanol, or it's a bit of this, it's a bit of that. We'll just carry this heavy thing. But I'm still pretty young, and now I'm like an 87-year-old woman. I'm like, I am not doing anything unless this has a procedure, and like you feel dumb doing that. But it's super important, and I would hate for that to happen to someone else. So yeah, just like think everything through, and like if you are hurting, stop. Like deadlines aren't worth it in that sense. Like they shouldn't have been to me, but they were, because I wanted to keep my job so badly that yeah, it didn't work out well for me. But it's working out now, but it didn't work out well for me at the time. But on a brighter note, I was just going to say, well, it's kind of not brighter. It's brighter, but not. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on workshops. Go to workshops that not like target them to what you want. Look for them, apply for funding for them, obviously. And if you are lucky enough to be working, approach your institution for something. I don't know, approach the uni. But I go to heaps of workshops, and I put a lot of money into them. And I love them. They're fun. They're networking at the same time, and you can meet wonderful people and just do really cool stuff. And then, you know, a lot of workshops you don't get that skill 100% down there, but it's more, I think Hannah was saying before, it's like, oh, I know how to do this. I can find the person, or like I know of that, or I know of that terminology, or I felt that before, or I understand what it should feel like or it shouldn't feel like. So doing that. And another thing was that I felt like I didn't get in the course was, I don't know what it's like. I'm in paper specialization, paper and books, but like if someone's wetting something out, feel how wet it is. You know how people always write in conservation literature, it's really kind of ambiguous. This was wet out, this was this. In case you haven't realized, I'm pretty neurotic. I'm like, how wet? What was going on? what was this? What was this amount exactly? Because it's always such a vague thing and people go, oh, it's just me, it's just my personal preference, or like this and this and this. But I know when I have interns, I'm like, I'm wetting this blotter out, you should come and touch it. Like, you know, it's that kind of really tactile thing that you miss in the literature. So yeah. Another rant from Camielle.
No, thank you for that. I feel like that was really important because like I'm still very young, but I definitely have that thing in my head where I go, oh, because I'm one of the younger people, I should be able to lift this piece of stone.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Hannah, did you have anything to add to?
No, just to say that the workshops thing that Camielle said is absolutely true. I too have spent a lot of money on travel and workshops, and I would spend more if I was able to travel at the moment. There were a couple of workshops that I was very disappointed I couldn't go to last year that I had planned, and they give me life, and they're everything. So I think however you can find that money, find it and invest it in workshops. And unfortunately, you know, it can be a bit limited in Australia. So if you can go overseas and go do something in like Barcelona or, you know, Sweden or wherever, like just, you know, it's worth it. It's really, really worth it. And also to Camielle's point and Irene's point of just look after yourself. It is, you know, it's incredibly important to me as an employer that people speak up and say, you know, this is too much for me right now, like particularly with like backing removals, you know, obviously those are sort of long-term kind of quite physical activities sometimes. And if someone says to me, you know, I need to switch tasks, we switch tasks straight away. And I like that about my employees. So I think that if you're worried about, you know, people taking that the wrong way or anything, hopefully any employer worth their salt will be impressed that you are able to kind of look out for yourself and keep yourself kind of sustainably able to work. And so I think definitely do that. Yeah.
Great. We had a question come in on the chat. Someone asked, Nancy asked, is there a discrepancy in job opportunities between the conservation specializations? And you all have your own specializations, so I'm not sure how well you'll be able to answer this. But, you know, are paper conservators more in demand than objects conservators is what she's asking.
Now, I have friends from the course. I was thinking about it today, like I said before, I was talking to someone at work about it in fixed positions, actually in time-based media, objects, paper and paintings in Sydney and Canberra. No one that I know in Melbourne, but in Sydney and Canberra, all from my cohort. And they've been, like Irene said, contract hopping around that area for a long time across specializations, which is awesome. So it's really good.
Wow, sorry. Can you repeat the question one more time? Sorry.
Yes.
I did have an answer.
Is there a discrepancy in job opportunities between conservation specializations? So is there a more of a demand for paper conservators over objects conservators?
I don't think so. I mean, we have 3 paintings conservators, 2 objects conservators, 1 wall paintings conservator, and me at the studio, and we're all very busy.
Great.
I think they're all pretty much advertised. Yeah, pretty much across the board, especially if you look at the Global Conservation Forum, you'll see that all kinds of jobs get advertised all the time. Yeah. And also, just because you do one specialty doesn't mean that you will have to always work within that specialty. I mean, I did objects, but like I've worked on paper objects, paper things before. Probably not quite as well as Camielle would work on them because that's her real specialty, but in different projects you work on different things. Sometimes you're just doing assessment or rehousing, and then it doesn't really matter what your specialty is. If you have already developed good handling skills and things, you can work across the specialties.
Yeah, I have a friend who's just got a position as the time-based media conservator at the National Gallery, and she's been in position. She was in painting. She worked for David Stein. Then she went to the gallery. They liked her. She worked at Preventive. Then she worked in the paper lab. Then she worked in the objects lab doing metals. And now, so I was always this like, I'm going to just do my hardcore specialization because it's better not to be a generalist. But really, like every expectation that I've had has been proven wrong at some point by someone. So I don't think there's necessarily a direct path for everyone. And I don't think people expect that.
Yeah, that's really great to hear, I think, as well, because when you start doing the treatment subjects in the course, you start to go, oh, I really wanted to do this specific type of object, for example, and they might not have that to work on that year. So sort of being able to apply your skills to many different things. We had a question come in from Michael, and he was asking, I think this might be for Hanna particularly, is like, how long did it take you to earn a profit? And there were some other ones about how did you estimate the value of potential clients when writing your business plan? And how many employees do you think it takes to be competitive?
All excellent questions. You may have noticed that I am not a business plan writer type of person, so I did not do that. I basically, I'm very much a get in there and feel what's happening, and then kind of take the path from there kind of person. But I suppose the in terms of the question of how long it took to make a profit, like a year and a half. We were probably struggling in the first 6 months. We did buy the business, so we had like a base of a few kind of major clients, which are kind of galleries in Melbourne, Sydney, and one in Queensland, and so we were able to kind of build on that base. But the person that ran the business before me was very much a do-it-all himself kind of person, and so I sort of saw the business running a little bit differently, very much in terms of expanding to have more people, so that the load wasn't sort of all on me. So really when we started making a profit was when I finally decided to hire somebody before I could afford it. And I hired somebody who was much better than me at paper conservation, because back to the previous point, I did objects as my stream, I did paintings as my thesis, and here I am doing paper conservation now. Yeehaw! I think that one of the things that I will say about that is, you know, to be competitive, I think it's less about, you know, what skills you have, particularly, and much more about kind of very, very niching down. So the way that the business runs is that there's kind of it's a very niche business. So Studio M is like a linen backing business. And so that's all we do. Day in, day out, we do, you know, 40 posters a week, we get them out the door, and all of those sorts of things. And the reason that we're able to do that is because it's kind of a standard practice for the poster industry as a whole. So the collectors, the dealers, the galleries all use this service in America and in France and here, in order to make sales and, you know, keep the poster industry alive. So there's that aspect of the business that we do run. And of course, you know, I still have my my dreams of you know, being a pure conservator, doing, you know, 13 hours of backing removal in a row and having someone pay me to do that. Obviously within private practice, you know, there's a limit to the amount of funds that a singular collector or a sort of person can have. And so what I'm doing instead is kind of, trying to make that business run really fast and hard, and then essentially kind of having my conservation practice on the side. And that's starting to become profitable within itself, but it's only just starting to do that after 5 years. So I think that having a particular service like, framing or like a specific thing that you do that you can offer, and it's just the one thing, one product, and then sort of pushing that in sort of full force for as long as you can, then there'll be people coming to you going, so we're the only people that do linen backing in Australia on a commercial scale. And so everybody comes to us. We have the whole business, and it helps us to fund the rest of the collective, which is now becoming much more profitable just within itself. So I now do a lot more sort of pure conservation work on particularly paper objects, but also on every other project that's going on at the studio. So like Caroline was working on the key carrying mural. She needed retouching hands. We were out there in the rain on the scaffold doing retouching on a wall painting. And, that's the sort of thing that we can do now. But I think, niching to start with, and then kind of building with the profits that you make, the kind of practice that you really, really want, is one path in. And that's certainly the path that I've taken. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. I know that was really roundabout, sorry.
No, that's okay. I think it was probably, there were a few questions about that sort of topic and yearly revenue and that sort of thing, but don't feel
yearly revenue and stuff. I mean, look,
really have to.
I mean, you just have to kind of essentially balance the books. But the thing that I found was that specifically the thing about hiring people before you think you can afford it is a really, really good thing to do, because you have no idea how much faster things go when there's more than one pair of hands. Like you think that you won't be able to get the work, but if you are able to, get something, do the treatment and have it out the door in a week, then people are like, oh, this is excellent. These people are efficient. They know what they're doing. And they'll come back to you with more work, and you will be able to. So building your capacity, build it and they will come, is essentially the idea for that. And then like revenue and stuff, like our revenue is so much higher now than it was before, but our profits are about the same because we keep hiring people. So it's kind of like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Also, profits aren't really that important to me. I'm much more interested in building a community of people who can be paid to do conservation work. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We had a question was there one particular workshop you felt was really useful or interesting? I'm sure that they actually change regularly, but was there a topic that you found useful that you've taken forward?
My absolute favorite was the Carribarry masterclass that they did at the State Library of Queensland. I've mentioned it before, but it was great. It was really great. Eddie Jose, who is the only non-Japanese, Japanese trained master paper conservator, came and gave us all these, wonderful tips and tricks. And I think it was good because he very much kind of embodied the way that I work. And so we kind of like had a really good understanding. And I'm sure that there are, workshop facilitators out there for everybody. But again, it took about 5 workshops before I found one that I really, really liked. Do them all, do as many as you can.
Camielle?
I just do nerdy book ones. And I just do them as often and as much as possible. I've been doing them online and through COVID, I've been buying, like, there's some excellent people, like, just on, I feel like I never used social media, and then I found Instagram literally during COVID. I'm like, yeah, just got the internet basically, kind of thing. And I just ordered like heaps of stuff that people were making, like kits online, but really kind of high end with really good instructions. And it's how I met my mentor for my George Alexander Fellowship, which is going to be great because we have all these online learning tools set up now because we've been doing it for 2 years. So there's like a whole new way of working that I think is going to be interesting for everyone to explore. And I guess, like, for us, like Irene said, you know, travel is hard anyway here because it's expensive. We're so isolated, and you know, just all of that. So all now we have to do is handle the time difference and do workshops at 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. and then go to work the next day. But yeah, literally anything, but also don't just do anything. Like, pick your, you know, because they're expensive and you really want to, you know, get out of it what you want to get out of. So maybe put your fingers in a few pies to see what you like and where your hands work best. I don't know, that's what I did. I didn't have any specific idea in mind. And the kit, I just saw someone wrote a question about the kits. I can recommend them to you. They are in the upwards of $500 range, just so you know. So that's why I started thinking we got to make this more accessible for us over here. So
great. And Irene?
The best courses I have done is obviously in my niche area of natural history conservation. So years ago, the world's expert on fluid preservation came and did a course at the Melbourne Museum. So I did that and it was so amazing. For me anyway. A lot of other people would not like that, but I liked it. And I also did a course in geological conservation, and I did a month-long workshop in laser cleaning, and that was really awesome, and I learned so much about using lasers. So yeah, there's so many workshops out there. At the moment, yeah, they're mostly online, so some of the more practical skills are harder to get, but that won't be that way forever. We'll be doing workshops. Maybe we'll meet in person one day at a workshop. That would be really great.
Yeah, I should say as well, for workshops, SCAM is working to try and organise some workshops for students, but obviously with going in and out of lockdowns has delayed things, and so bear with us, we're trying. So you should have, you know, hopefully something that won't cost students anything soon, or not cost a lot. Yeah.
One other thing I was going to say is contact guilds in your area that you think are doing interesting things. A lot of them have kind of like ancient looking websites, which I'm really attracted to, like, you know, 20-year-old looking websites. But they're awesome and they'll share their knowledge with you, and it's really compatible with what we do. Because I'm not an artist and I don't have an art background, like reverse engineering stuff was harder for me, especially with 3D objects and books. So yeah, guilds, like bookbinders guilds, have been amazing for me. I've done some metalworking things because I wanted to learn more about knives and knife sharpening. But I think there's a lot of great guilds, like Footscray has some amazing metalworkers. I'm sure that there's a list of them, like you go through Respect and you get in contact with some guilds. So yeah, there's some crazy people out there who do amazing things that aren't conservators, and I reckon they're the place to go.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, it's 8 o'clock. Did anyone have any final questions, or we might wrap it up?
I had a really quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
Sorry if I missed something. Did anybody get to Genevieve's question about sourcing materials for like treatment projects, even if they're just personal projects of your own, to test out some of the stuff you're learning? Because like Genevieve, I'm also specialising in paper, and I was really lucky to get gifted some double ups of stuff from the Queensland State Library, but that seemed to have just been a one-off. So now I'm trying to source more stuff that I can do tear repairs and stuff like that on, just so that I'm in the practice of doing it. Yeah, so at the moment I've just done treatment 1. I haven't done treatment 2 yet, but yeah, looking for more mucked up stuff to get my hands on. Don't know where to go, like Genevieve.
Where do I get my stuff from? I go through Talus or Archival Survival, which is a little bit more expensive. I usually go in with some mates and we just get like a bulk order of stuff, and that's Anderson's Bindery have some good tools and sometimes some good paper, and you don't need the highest quality stuff. So where do I normally go to? Hiromi Papers, they have some good stuff. Also, Spruik, for I don't know if she's here, but Sandra Song, some of you might know her from the course. I think she did the internship last year, and she's had some internship time at GCS. She is selling Chinese mulberry paper, which is really good. I didn't know of a Chinese paper supplier in Melbourne, but she's importing it, I think, from Taiwan as part of building her business, and I can send her website around. But her mulberry papers are really good. There's a big conversation that's larger than this, the scope of this talk, about Chinese versus Japanese papers and ethics and all of that kind of thing. But she has some great quality papers that are pretty similar to Kozo fiber papers in terms of working with them, and they'll give you experience, and they're good, and they're at a really good price as well. So an ad for her. But that's something she's taken out of the conservation degree and something she's doing, which is cool as well. So.
Did either of Hanna or Irene have any experience getting those sort of objects? I think the idea was sort of objects for treatment. Like, would you reach out to smaller museums and ask them, or find conservators in your local area and ask if they had things that they needed worked on?
I mean, I get a whole bunch of bunged up stuff, so I don't really need to sort of search outside of the studio. But I mean, like op shops, if you're just sort of going around, I mean, I have a mystery tube at the moment of a whole bunch of posters that someone dropped off and no one is claiming. So eventually I'll have to get rid of them. But yeah, I think op shops would probably be the place to go. I recently got a dummy object for a suction table workshop that we were hosting, and I just got that from the Salvos down the road. It was just an etching that was badly framed and needed some work, and it's currently just still sitting in the quarantine room, having had a very, very short treatment on the suction table. But you can have that if you want. But yeah, hopefully there'll be enough to find, around the place. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, when I was a student, I used to get together with like maybe 4 other students on weekends, and we would smash a ceramic and then all stick it back together. And you only once, like, don't put a ceramic together once, like, don't put it together right. Like, you'll learn a lot from doing that. Like, I highly recommend doing that. Buy a $1 teacup, smash it, put it back together. Even if you just use super glue, you'll really learn a lot about the process of like which pieces need to be joined first. Like, if you can't be going into uni to do treatment, you can build these skills other ways at the moment.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, we might leave it there. Thank you so much to our 3 wonderful guests who have shared so much information. And I think have given me a bit more confidence. There's always something reassuring talking to people in the field and going, oh, okay, there will be some sort of job, something will happen. We're all in the same boat. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you've enjoyed it. Yeah, we might leave it there then. Thank you.
Wait, Genevieve, have we got any other exciting and wonderful events coming up on the horizon that people should stay tuned for?
We are working on them. We are working on workshops, and we are working on possibly a panel not unlike this one on sustainability, possibly. Don't want any promises because it's in the phases of just happening, but you know, if you're interested, make sure you look out for those things.
If I, an unaffiliated consumer, wishes to be informed of goings-ons in the future of Scam, how would I best do this?
Well, join Scam. We have a website. I'm sure you can put it in the chat and you can become a member, and also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. It's Student Conservators, I think. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Daniel.